Colorectal cancer is one of the most common in the Western world. In slang, they are called polyps, and they are, in fact, the beginning of an alteration that affects the very end of your digestive tract. The good news is that if detected early and it doesn't spread throughout the body, the survival rate can reach up to 90%. The bad news, something that personally infuriates me as well, is that there are parts of the world like Uganda and India where this cancer doesn't exist. Is it perhaps a genetic issue, you might wonder? No, my friends. It all comes down to simple dietary habits. This video will be divided into two parts. In the first part, we will understand what colorectal cancer is and what its early symptoms are. This way, you too will have the tools to know when it's time to be concerned and seek medical attention. In the second part, we will talk about treatments, especially the most important one, prevention. You will understand how a small change in your dietary habits can bring huge benefits for the rest of your life. Colorectal cancer is a malignant alteration of the colon's cells in the intestine. It begins with simple, harmless changes known as aberrant crypt foci. What does this complicated word mean? The crypts or crypts themselves are the small crevices formed by the intestinal villi, those tiny hair-like structures that help us absorb nutrients when we eat. An aberrant crypt focus is an alteration, a formation of altered cell groups that can later develop into polyps. If these foci are already harmful alterations but affect the exterior of the intestine, polyps are alterations on the inside and thus directly affect your body. If these polyps go undiagnosed and aren't removed, they can change and form genuine cancerous mutations, multiplying and spreading to affect other organs within your body. These latter stages, of course, are the most serious and have a lower life expectancy. Fortunately, with regular screening, especially if you're over 45, you can immediately identify and remove any polyps to prevent them from spreading. Generally, in the early stages, this cancer doesn't produce symptoms. That's why the general recommendations from the Health Institute advise undergoing regular examinations, such as a colonoscopy at least once every 5 years after the age of 50. Why after this date? Because the passage of time is one of the unmodifiable factors that can increase your risk of this issue. Of course, if you smoke, drink alcohol, or have diabetes, the risk increases even more. So I recommend getting these exams for early diagnosis even before the age of 50. However, if you don't undergo any examination and leave the tumor the chance to spread, these are the most common symptoms you might experience. The first and most characteristic ones are real changes in your digestive capacity. You could suffer from both constipation and diarrhea. On one hand, constipation is due to the fact that an external mass forms inside the intestine, slowing down your digestion completely. You'll have trouble going to the bathroom, and this problem should persist day after day. If you have an imbalanced meal with low fiber and vegetables, you might already experience this issue. So don't be alarmed if you only suffer from constipation. If, however, you notice that things aren't improving, that things aren't changing despite changing your diet, then talking to a doctor is a great idea. The second sign that should alarm you is a change in the shape and color of your stools. I know it's not common to look at the shape and color of your own stools, but if you realize that you're starting to have more and more intestinal disturbances, even the color and shape of your stools can give you some clues. On one hand, your stools might become narrower and more constricted. There's less room for the stools to pass through, so they take on a more elongated and less round shape. On the other hand, there could be a real alteration in color because there might be drops of blood inside. Typically, since the tumor is in the distal part, the color of the stools could be bright red blood. This is different from a problem higher up in the digestive tract, such as the stomach or the upper intestine, because the blood that comes out in these areas is still digested by microorganisms, and it makes your stools not bright red but rather a dark red, almost close to black. But also, don't underestimate bleeding when you go to the bathroom for a bowel movement. I know it could very well be something harmless like common hemorrhoids, but even though hemorrhoids are a common issue, it doesn't mean they're the norm. Over time, hemorrhoids can also be a problem of digestive capacity, likely due to a low-fiber diet. Keep in mind that if you have excessive bleeding, start experiencing digestion issues, constipation, and notice changes in the color and shape of your stools. These are all symptoms that it's better to make an appointment with a doctor. Of course, abdominal cramps or abdominal pain should also raise a red flag. But let me tell you more. Sometimes the pain could be in the back, a classic backache. Be very attentive if you have a backache that never changes, that never goes away, even if you change your habits, even if you change your position. Back pain, in this case, is one of the most common and usually harmless disturbances. However, in certain situations, such as in colorectal cancer, you might experience back pain as an initial symptom. There's a specific characteristic, though, that whether you're standing, lying down, crouching, or relaxing as much as possible, this pain doesn't change, doesn't shift. In fact, you might even have pain that increases a few hours after eating because once the food has entered and passed through the stomach, it promotes digestion. And these are the moments when inflammation in the colon or rectum, which you might have, becomes more pronounced and makes you feel worse. In advanced cases of cancer in the later stages, you might even suffer from chronic fatigue and unexplained weight loss. In those cases, I have to tell you, you're already in a very advanced situation. The tumor has spread so much that it's sapping your energy without you even knowing it, causing you to lose weight despite not following any diet. The tumor will be so extensive that it will deplete your energy, leaving you constantly lethargic and very tired. I hope it doesn't come to this for you, that you've already had a medical checkup, because with the available tests today, this advanced stage can be prevented and stopped in time. But now let's get to the most interesting part. The information I would really like to see spread as widely as possible to allow us to prevent this problem at its root, rather than trying to cure it. Unfortunately, the turmeric you consume is rarely fully absorbed and enters the bloodstream, making its effectiveness inside your body much, much lower. But when it comes to colorectal cancer, turmeric doesn't need to enter our bloodstream. In fact, if it's not assimilated, it goes right to the area where we're suffering from the tumor. In fact, studies have yielded surprising results. In one study, a group of smokers, who have a much higher risk compared to the average population to develop aberrant crypt foci, which are the initial cellular alterations that can lead to possible tumors, were taken. Indeed, by adding turmeric to their diet, the risk of developing these aberrant crypt foci has reduced by 40%. But what if you already have developed polyps? In this case, studies on people with hereditary colon and rectal cancer have shown that 6 months of turmeric supplementation reduced both the number and size of the polyps by half. And in more advanced stages, when the polyp has already transformed into a full-blown cancerous cell. In a study where 15 patients were given turmeric supplements for 2 months, 5 of them, or 33%, saw their tumors completely stop growing. This underscores once again the ability of this nutrient to prevent the tumor from spreading further. Certainly, you might say, but it's a very small study. You're right, it's only 5 out of 15 individuals. However, let's not forget that turmeric is not a drug and has no side effects, aside from perhaps giving your stool a slightly different color. So, with so much potential, why aren't more studies and research being conducted? With a somewhat critical note, I can tell you that turmeric cannot be patented, and people can't be charged exorbitant amounts for something that is naturally occurring. Hence, unfortunately, I don't see many pharmaceutical companies investing in research on this type of food that won't boost their sales. But is all health tied to turmeric? Of course not. In fact, one of the main characteristics of Indian habits is not only how many spices they use in their cuisine, but also what they use them on, meaning what they eat every day. If we look at their traditional diet, it's primarily rich in fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, with minimal meat consumption because it's expensive and not accessible to everyone. All these foods with exceptional properties have one thing in common: fiber. Fiber seems to be directly linked to the health of your intestine and the risk of developing colon cancer. A practical way to determine how much fiber you're consuming can be linked to the size of your stools. Size matters. In a study, it was shown that producing less than half a kilogram of feces per day increases the risk of colon cancer by 3-fold. This is because the more stools you produce, the faster their transit inside the intestine. If you want to know if you're reaching or surpassing that half-kilogram mark of daily stool output, there's a simple way, and it involves a scale. No, don't think of the worst. You don't have to dirty your scale. Simply weigh yourself before and after going to the bathroom to see if you have indeed shed that half a kilo or possibly a kilo in weight, which can be attributed to the fact that you've expelled your stools. This parameter is much more important than how many times you go to the bathroom because many people can go every day and still suffer from constipation. The reason for this is that when you consume an adequate amount of fiber, the food you eat should be expelled within a maximum of 2 to 3 days in ideal conditions, and it should take 1 or 2 days if everything is functioning optimally. However, if you don't consume enough fiber, the transit time of your food inside the intestine could extend to 4 to 5 days, leading you to have a bowel movement every day, but with stools that are the remnants of food you ate 4 to 5 days ago. This indicates that your bowel movements are slow, suggesting you have a low fiber intake and therefore a much higher risk of developing intestinal problems, including tumors. If you want to understand how fast your bowel movements are, you can use this tool. Eat some beets and observe when your stool becomes pink or reddish. The third step to prevent colon and rectal cancer, as well as any type of cancer, is to shift from eating meat to consuming more legumes. The consumption of both processed and unprocessed meat seems to be directly linked to an increased risk of rectal cancer. Moreover, meat also appears to have a direct impact on the iron levels in your body. While too little iron can lead to anemia, an excess of iron can lead to the formation of harmful free radicals in your body. On one hand, we have non-heme iron from plants, which your intestines can absorb more or less depending on your needs. On the other hand, we have heme iron found in meat, which your intestines can't regulate and absorbs completely. If you consume excessive meat, it can elevate your optimal iron levels, thereby increasing the risk of developing various tumors due to an excess of free radicals. This has been confirmed by some studies in which people were advised to donate blood to lower their iron levels. In a follow-up period of more than 5 years, those who made frequent blood donations and maintained optimal iron levels in their blood had their risk of developing new intestinal tumors reduced by half. Donating blood is a noble act you can do if you're inclined, but perhaps shifting to a plant-based diet, rather than one heavy on meat, could be the more sustainable underlying solution. But plants, legumes, and seeds also have a component that has been controversial for years: phytates. Phytates have long been accused of reducing the absorption of minerals and therefore weakening our bones. For this reason, some diets recommend reducing phytates in legumes or other foods. This belief stemmed from studies conducted mainly on mice or animals in the 1950s. However, recent studies have completely overturned this theory, emphasizing that higher phytate levels in your body reduce the risk of developing breast, prostate, liver, and colon cancers. These studies suggest that individuals who consume a significant amount of phytates have a much lower risk of bone fractures and osteoporosis. The benefits of phytates are comparable to anti-osteoporosis medications, making them an optimal system for preventing this problem without unwanted side effects. The National Polyp Study found that by adding 70 grams of beans or legumes to your diet, you can reduce the risk of new polyp formations in your intestine by 65%. When you consume seeds, legumes, whole grains, or dried fruits, phytates are absorbed into your intestines and directly affect the tumor cells. They have an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effect on these cells and stimulate the activation of the immune system to attack malignant cells. Phytates are considered essential molecules for health and are sometimes referred to as vitamin B because they also have the ability to convert cancerous cells back into normal cells. Moreover, individuals who consume significant amounts of phytates are less likely to experience cardiovascular problems, diabetes, and kidney stone formation. Additionally, consuming red fruits, as previously mentioned, has been studied to determine which plant or fruit could be the most effective in reversing the degenerative process and the formation of tumor cells. Researchers wanted to test red fruits in a group of people with genetic predispositions to develop polyps. After 9 months of supplementation with red fruits, the development of polyps was reduced by half in this limited group of 15 individuals. It's worth noting that the researchers aimed to administer these red fruit supplements directly to the area where tumors and polyps were present, which was done rectally using suppositories. Unfortunately, as a side effect, these individuals experienced some anal fissures. Eating red fruits daily can be an ideal strategy for you to reduce the risk of these tumors. In summary, colon cancer is not solely determined by age, but is a modifiable condition through dietary choices. A small effort in changing your taste preferences and habits can bring significant benefits. So, think about it carefully. Incorporate more red fruits, legumes, seeds, dried fruits, and whole grains into your diet. The more fiber you consume, the faster your intestinal transit will be. Include more phytates in your diet for better overall health and a reduced risk of cancer. Spice up your meals with turmeric and other spices to lower your risk of developing any type of cancer. Assimilate more iron from plants rather than from meat, as plant-derived iron is more manageable by your intestines. Now it's your turn to do your part. Start by commenting below, sharing your point of view, experiences, or any scientific sources that may contradict what I've mentioned. We can all learn from each other. If you've had a relative or family member who has faced this problem, or if you're currently dealing with it yourself, how are things going? How are doctors helping you with this issue? What alternative approaches have they suggested? Have you considered changing your diet or eating habits? Feel free to share your thoughts, and I'll try to read and understand what the best solution may be for managing this problem. We'll see you next week with another video. Goodbye, and thank you.